Hi everyone. Okay, so I'm going to go over one more approach that we can use to solve remove people. This is the trickiest function inside this entire project, in many people's opinions, including mine. In the first video, I kind of gave two common approaches, but for some people, this third approach might make a bit more sense. So let's go ahead and we'll get started. Just to give you a quick overview of how this is going to work, if you recall from my first video, we used nested for loops, and we're actually going to use nested for loops here again, but just in a slightly different way. In the old video, I told you all to say, okay, if I'm at person 3 and I want to remove them because we see them in indices to remove, I take 4, move it down to 3, and we erase them by covering them up, right? 5 goes to 4, 6 goes to 5 for as many people as we have in that array. Maybe it's 7, so we stop once we get to 7. Okay, but in this approach, we're going to use the for loops in a slightly different way. We're still going to have nested for loops, right? But we're just going to use them in a different way. So I'll go ahead and we'll do a little setup. So to begin, we have to start somewhere, right? So we're going to have the original people array. We will just write that right here. Let's say original people, right? Each index contains a person object, original people array. We have 10 spots. Starting at index 0, going all the way to 9. Right, and then we also have another variable for the number of people who we actually have inside of here. Just because we have 10 spots doesn't mean we're actually using all of them, right? So we have a private mem variable called numPeople, and that represents how many do I actually care about in this array right now. So let's just say for this example, we're going to use the number 7. So we only care about 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That gives us 7 people. So we stop after index 6. We can say numPeople equals 7 in this case, and we will of course have people here, D, E, F, G. And over here on the other side of this line, which we've drawn for ourselves, just to understand the capacity idea, we don't really know what's over here. It could be Z, it could be H, it could be J, right? We don't really care what's over there. We only care about the first 7 spots, okay? The next thing that we're going to need to solve this problem is we're going to need indices to remove, right? The targets, the people we don't want to end up after we're done with this function. So we're going to say indices to remove. And then there'll just be some indices in here. I'll say 5, 1, and 3 are the people who I want to get rid of. One thing I will add here is that in the first video with the first 2 approaches, I told you all it would be a good idea to sort this array before we use it. However, in this third approach, it's actually not going to be necessary, and we'll see why in just a second. So hold that thought for now. But how are we going to use for loops to solve this problem, right? I mentioned that we were going to use nested for loops. Well, the first one is going to start at the very beginning of the original people array and go all the way to the end, right? I'll just say there's a for loop. The idea is it goes all the way through and starts at 0, right? And then at each index, we're going to have another for loop on the inside where we're going to go through indices to remove. So we'll say from here all the way to there with a for loop. And we start at the very first one. And the idea is the outer for loop is going to take us through the original people array. And at each spot, we're going to use the inner for loop to try and check, should I keep this person that I'm currently at? So in this example right here, we didn't necessarily say I might just refer to it as I'm talking about this right here. So if I is at 1, we go through inside this inner for loop, we see that 5 is not 1, we see that 1 is 1. So that would indicate to us that we don't want to keep this, right? Okay, so that's just kind of the general idea of using the nested for loops. And then what makes this approach different is that rather than shifting people in their place, we're actually going to use another array that we create ourselves, a temporary array full of people, right? But we're only going to copy over the people who we want to be in that array, right? So we're going to go through with our for loop on the outside here, and then we're going to just check, like I'm at person 0 right now. I didn't find them in indices to remove, so I'll copy them down. We're going to need a space for this, right? So we'll say, what should we call it? How about we call it temporary array of people, right? People objects. right? Size, max size. So we have the 10 spots. I'll draw those out right now. Okay. Right, and this will be the temporary array where we're going to move over the people we want to keep. Okay, we're going to need two more things to make this a little bit easier for ourselves. One thing that might be useful is a Boolean, right? And that's going to let us know whether or not we want to keep this person. So we're going to say Boolean, do we keep? And for this approach, we're always just going to assume yes. And we'll see how that works in a second. Okay, and the other thing we're going to need is to remember the size of the temporary array, right? As I'm moving people over, the first person grows that size from 0 to 1. If I move another person, that size should be 2, right? So we're going to need one more variable. We can just call it number of copied people. And then start off at 0 because right now we haven't copied anybody. Okay, and then one quick thing to note too about this number that we just created, number of people copied, is that it's always going to show us where in our array we want to put the next person. If it's size 0, we know that we want to put the first person at index 0 because that's the first spot in the array. And then num people will become 1, right? We have somebody in there. So num people is now 1. And then the idea is like, okay, I have another person I want to put in there. Let's call them D. Where do I put them? Right there at 1, and then it becomes 2. And there's a pattern there, but I'll stop right there for now. Okay, and then we'll start with 0 people. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll walk through this example very quickly, and we'll get a feel for how these nested for loops are going to interact, where the Boolean value comes into play, and then how we actually want to copy over. Like, where do we put these people once we find that we want to keep them? Okay, so the outer for loop is going to start. I call it I, right? It's going to start at 0. We're going to go inside, right? And we're going to go through indices to remove with our inner for loop. And right now we're looking to see if we can find where we're currently at inside of this indices to remove. So right now, where am I currently at? I'm at I equals 0. So right now I'm looking for 0. Okay, so this for loop goes, 5 is not 0, 1 is not 0, 3 is not 0, and we get to the end, right? So I didn't find 0 in the indices to remove, therefore we want to keep them. And we'll notice we started off by assuming that we were going to keep this person, and then in the end, it was still equal to yes because we never changed it. Okay, so we want to keep this person. Where are we going to copy them? Well, wherever num people copied says, I should put them inside of the temporary array. Right now it's 0, so I should put them at index 0, and that's just the first open spot. So that's perfect, right? I will grab a blue color, and we'll say we copy this person. Okay, so that was the first iteration of the for loop. Now, I goes to 1, right? We just took care of 0, the for loop continues. And then we always reset this stuff here. And we're going to start off by assuming that we're going to keep 1, right? I is equal to 1. Let's just assume that we'll keep them. We'll look for evidence to say that we shouldn't. Okay, so the inner for loop starts at 5. 5 is not equal to 1. So we go to the next one. And this is the other case, right? We do find it in indices to remove because 1 right here is equal to 1 right up here. Oops, not clear. The 1 right here is equal to the 1 up here. So we should go over here and we should no longer say, yes, I want to keep them. We should change this bool to no, I do not want to keep them. All right, the for loop, it's just a for loop. It's going to finish out, right? It goes all the way to the end. Now we check, do we keep them? It's equal to no. So we are not going to copy this person over. Okay, we're going to reset to the next one. This is going to be the next iteration, right? We just did 1. That was the whole thing. So we're going to move this over here. And now I is at 2. One thing I want to quickly fix down here is 1 over 1 person. That's going to be important for the next person that we see. Okay, so we just finished I equals 1. Now we're at I equals 2. Again, the inner for loop is going to start, but first we have to assume, yes, let's keep them. And let's see if we shouldn't. Okay, we'll go through the for loop. I'm looking for 2. 5 is not 2. 1 is not 2, 3 is not 2. Oh, we got to the end. I'm going to check, do we still keep them? That value is still yes. Okay, so we're going to copy them over, right? Where do I copy them? Wherever number of copied people says I should, right? Right now, this array, the temporary one, is of size 1, right? We're just saying we have one thing inside of it. So we're going to put it at index 1. And let's see how that works out. I move the first index 2 over here to index 1 down here. And I say C. Awesome. Okay. So that was that iteration. Now we're going to go through the next one. This goes back here. And then we're going to update this number down here to be 2. We should do that immediately as we copy over. I always keep forgetting. Okay. Move that down so this error can go here. Okay, I might as well just put some check marks as well. We've taken care of this, this, and this. Now we're on 3. Okay, so the for loop goes, right? We started by assuming that we're going to keep them. We're looking for 3. 5 is not equal to 3. 1 is not equal to 3. And then finally, right here, 3 is equal to 3, right? That tells us we need to go over here, change this yes to a no. And then the for loop on the inside, it finishes. Now we're going to check, do I keep this person? Right here, it says no. We are not going to keep them, so we do not want to copy them over. We don't make any changes down here. Okay, that was that iteration. We're going to reset everything. There. This moves over on the outer for loop. That's the first thing that happens, really, right? We just did that one. And then we also need to remember to assume that we're going to start off by keeping them. Amazing. Okay, next one, we are at I equals 4. I'm going to use my for loop over here to go through indices to remove. We're going to check. Oh, what happened there? There we go. Okay, I'm looking for 4. 5 is not 4. Okay, there we go. 5 is not 4. 1 is not 4. And then 3 is not 4. This goes off to the end. And then we're going to check. Yes, I still keep them. Okay, so I'm going to copy over. Where do I copy them? Into index 2, because that's what num people copied is. So I'm going to say E moves down into spot 2. Okay. We're going to move this back over here. For the next iteration of the for loop, this goes over there. And then we just took care of 4. So now I is equal to 5. Okay, we're going to remember to update this down here. Oh. This now has 3 people inside of it. Okay, so now we are at I equals 5 with the outer for loop. We're going to check for 5. Does 5 equal 5? Yes, it does. Okay, so I go over here. I say this is now no, we do not want to keep them. We're going to let the inner for loop finish out because that's just what for loops do. Bam, bam, and bam. Okay, now we try one more time. Do we want to keep them? No, so we're not going to copy them over. Okay, awesome. This gets reset, and we are on the last round of it here. Okay, so we just took care of index 5. Not copy over. We always start off by assuming yes. Let's keep them. Okay, last iteration of the for loop on the outside, right? I is equal to 6, which is right before num people, which is 7. I'm going to look for 6 now. 5 is not 6, 1 is not 6, 3 is not 6 off the end. We're going to check, do I keep them? The Boolean still says yes, so we will keep them. We're going to copy them over into the next slot where num people copied says we should copy it over into. Num people is 3, so we're going to copy it over into 3. And just like that, we say G now exists here. And then we don't forget, like I always do, to update this number down here to reflect the new size. Okay, so sorry for that very long example. I just wanted to give you guys a pretty in-depth look of how these nested for loops are interacting, just so you can feel confident about how this all works. Okay, so now where are we, right? We have just went through everything, right? The original people array, indices to remove. We've determined which ones do I copy over, and I've copied them over into this brand new array, right? but that's not where we want them to exist in the end. We really want them to end up back in the original people array, right? So the next step is we're going to have to copy over from the temporary array back into the original people array. I'll write that down for you. Next step, copy over new people array into original people array. Right, and to do that, we just use one for loop. We say whatever you find at the copy, it equals original at the same index. Next iteration of the for loop, I take that person, I put it down into the original people index, copying from the copy that we made back into the original. Okay, the other thing that's going to be important now is since we have a different number of people, we have to also remember not only to copy over those people, but to update the size of the original people array. So we're going to say num people is going to be equal to, and what were we using up here? I think we had a name for it. Yes, number of people copied. We're going to use that same thing. Number of people copied or copied people. Okay, so we copy over the people. We say this is the new size. There we go. I guess we basically effectively erased these people from the array, right? Okay, so that was the original goal. The last thing that we have to do is we have to remember, like in the first and second approach that I gave you, just to call reset requests. So then we'll say reset requests. Right, and then just a quick recap. The reason why we do that is because there was somebody inside of indices to remove, or I'm sorry, if there was somebody on the floor and they were the only person with an up request, and then we removed them, the whole floor should not have an up request anymore because that person's gone. It's just all the other people who had a down request. So that's why we call reset requests. Okay, hopefully that was helpful, the idea of using nested for loops, but just in a slightly different way, copying over from the original one, just the people I care about, into the temporary one, and then copying from the temporary one back into the original one. Okay, I hope you found that video helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to post something on Piazza, and I can check that and answer any questions you might have about this video. All right, good luck and happy coding.